Welcome to the podcast editing and support show. My name is Dave. Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's go. We're going to start the episode right now. Happy to have you here. Let's do this. Hey, glad to be back with you again. We're talking about implementing project-based pricing for your podcast services. Glad you hit play. Thank you for being here. If you haven't heard the other episodes, go back. There's a few more previous to this one where we kind of unpack more around pricing your business and looking at it as a project-based pricing model compared to other ways that you can set up your business. So it's just a different way to look at it and wanted to put it in front of you. Today is just kind of a wrapping up our thoughts and kind of completing the discussion. So we're going to talk about a few things, just some additional considerations when you're setting up your podcast editing and support business. Again, all around the pricing side. Glad you're here. Glad you hit play. Would love to hear from you over at podcasteditingandsupport.com. It's always fun getting a voice message through the SpeakPipe or an email, whatever serves you the best. I love hearing from you. It's great. I see you in my stats, but I'd love to hear your voice. Podcasteditingandsupport.com. Thank you for being here. So we're going to jump in by looking at how we implement our value-based pricing for our podcast services to our clients as podcasters. So here's some considerations for you around implementing this value-based pricing. 4 things here to kind of consider. First, we really need to focus in on our client outcomes. We need to emphasize the impact of professional editing on the listener engagement piece for your podcaster and how we can help your podcaster grow their show. As well, we can highlight expertise and showcase your knowledge of the podcast trends, anything around audio quality and audio standards, and industry best practices. Now, to have this kind of knowledge, you actually have to invest time and study and learn and grow. So there's many great resources for that. Pod News is a great hub for daily information and a weekly summary at the end of the week. Great podcast for you to check out. Podnews.net would be one I would send you to. It does get a little techie, which is fine, but you can always kind of scrub through and pick out the things that are best for you. But you get a lot of podcast news there, and I really encourage you to go check them out. That's one good resource. As well, there's a lot of great podcasts about podcasting, of which I have one. I hope it's great. The How to Podcast series. And I'd love to have you come over and check that out. 500 plus episodes around the whole podcasting business and listening to other podcasters and their journey at howtopodcast.ca. So that's another one. I'd love for you to come by, say hi, have a listen. That'd be great. But you need to increase your expertise. Don't just set up your business and hope that the limited skill sets you have will get you by. The podcast industry is changing, growing, morphing, and there's new things happening all the time. So you need to be on top of this to better serve your client because they don't have time to stay up to date on all the things happening in podcasting. So you can be that resource for them to let them know where the industry is going, and you can help them to head in that direction. So highlight your expertise and be up to date on your knowledge of podcasting. The other thing we can do and we need to do is to quantify results for our podcaster by providing case studies or testimonials which demonstrates improved download numbers, growth, audience retention rates, and audience feedback and just community building. All of these things we can give back to our podcaster as kind of a metrics dashboard possibly, or an email update, a graph, something that they can just quickly look at and go, okay, good, we're heading in the right direction. And you can keep them up to speed on that again because they're busy. So they don't have time to go into all their stats and pull all that information. This is another value add that you can add to your buffet of services we talked about. It's another option you can put in front of them to help them stay on top of what's happening in their podcast. So please offer these services. They'll be so glad you did. And then the other part 4 under implementing our value-based pricing is just offering consultation services for the podcaster. We can include strategy sessions to help clients improve their overall podcast quality and reach. We can also help them with content creation, mapping out a calendar of ideas for the year, 6 months, helping them find guests, helping them be a guest. It goes on and on and on. So when somebody says to me, I want to be a podcast editor, I want to know, okay, to what degree? And if it's just ums and ahs, like I've mentioned before, that's something that's being taken over by AI and great tools to the point where not everyone's looking for somebody to do ums and ahs, and that's it. They're looking for more. And you should be thinking about how you can offer more to your clients than some of the simple tasks that could be automated in the future to the point where people aren't going to need you for that anymore. So start planning now, diversify what you know, learn more, add more to your list of what you know how to do so you can serve your clients better. One thing that I know some podcast editors do is they offer a tiered package for their podcast services. Now, this is just basically, if you think of a tier, think of steps, different, right? And you have a choice to make. And you have this choice, or this choice, for example. And it's kind of like getting, again, a whole package of things together in one price for this package, for example. So there's a few things in here around offering tiered packages that I want to chat about. So think of these as 4 different ways to kind of look at structuring your tiered packages. You could have a basic package of podcast support and editing, which could include, just as an example, could include essential editing service like noise reduction, leveling, and basic mixing. And you could start there around $50 to $75 an episode. Easily. US, Canadian funds, about $50 to $75 per episode. The standard package, which is one more higher, could add more services like content editing. Now you're getting into the actual content of what's been said on the show and making content decisions for your podcaster. Music integration for intros and outros, or maybe some sound effects and things in the background. You hear my swipes in this show, for example, the music at the beginning and end of the podcast. You can also add show notes and maybe blog articles or LinkedIn articles based on the content. There's a lot of great things that we can do here. Episode titles, all that could be part of a standard package, which could be $75 to $150 per episode. See how it's gone up? Now, a premium package could be more comprehensive and include advanced audio processing, transcript creation, marketing support, and on and on and on. Like, you could really go crazy here and just bring all kinds of great stuff in to help your podcaster. This pricing can range from $150 to $350 per episode. The other part you could do is custom enterprise solutions, where you can tailor high-end packages for businesses and organizations. You could potentially price yourself at $450 per episode by offering a suite of things that help someone in business. And to them, they're going to spend money on marketing anyway. They'd much rather than spend it on you than a park bench or a bus sign or a radio commercial that maybe somebody will hear. Better to spend it with you. So make sure you have clearly outlined your tiered packages. What do they look like? What do they include? What are the prices? I like monthly as a kind of a guideline for payment instead of just per episode. For me, it seems to be where I'm naturally drawn to. Now, if you like per episode, great. It's just, I like having it monthly because it's also a spark to the podcaster to get stuff done because they've already prepaid for it. So if you don't do your 4 episodes a month and you only give me 2, you've paid for 4. So unless I'm feeling really super generous, you paid for 4, you only did 2 because you got busy. So it's going to keep them on task and they're keeping you busy because they're going to keep recording. So I like monthly for that reason, but you need to figure out what works for you. So set up your tiered packages. We could also, a little bit chatter just around using project cost management systems for our podcast editing and support business. And what does this mean? There's a lot of great tools out there that'll help you with this. We need to track the time that we spend on each task. We've talked about this already. We need to use tools to monitor our editing, mixing, and administrative time, either per episode, per client. We need some way to justify how many hours and minutes we spent working for this client, so we have a hard number. Again, that number is going to go back into the calculation we talked about earlier on a previous episode. So you need to know that number, right? So another thing is we need to monitor software and equipment costs. We talked about this, account for the depreciation and upgrades for our editing tools, our monthly and yearly subscriptions for tools that we use in our editing. Maybe our digital audio workstation. I'm using Audacity because it's free and I've been using it for a long time for music editing. So it's like another arm for me. I just know it inside and out. So I don't have a cost for Audacity, but if you're using a paid digital audio workstation, you're also going to have to include the cost associated with that as well. So monitor your software and equipment cost as well. Analyze profitability per client, which is interesting because I think if we have more than one client, we kind of look at as like a group, and we don't kind of segregate each of them and kind of make sure that each one is paying for their own weight, like covering their own costs and making money client by client by client, not just as a big group where maybe one is paying well and one's not paying well, bringing you down. So you need to isolate and make sure that everyone is creating profit for your business. So identify which projects and which clients are the most profitable, and maybe work on the ones that are the least profitable for you, and come up with a plan for that as well. We need to just set some basic benchmarks for our business and establish any kind of efficiency goals that we could implement for our business to help improve our profitability over time. We're all about making money for long-term investment to either be self-sufficient financially and be able to do this on our own, or to bring on a team and pay them a living wage. That's very important to me and very important to anybody that I work with. So make sure that you have kind of went through the process of structuring out your cost management and you know your numbers. Please, it's very important. The last part on all this is just to come back and do a regular pricing review of what you're doing in your business so that you know where you're headed. A big part of running our business is we need to stay informed on what's happening in the market, like what's going on in the world of editing and support for podcasters, so that we understand what our competitors are doing and check out their pricing with their annual plans and make sure you're current with the rates that are out there. Now, these rates can go from $20, $30 to $200 per hour for an experienced editor. So you need to figure out where you are on that scale and price accordingly. Again, if you've just started, $200 an hour might be a big ask. Like I said, I have free clients. They're not paying me anything, but I'm building up my history. I'm building up my references by doing this for them for free. So it's working well, and I'll be able to leverage that in the future where I can maybe turn them into something a little bit more sustainable than free. Also, don't forget to adjust for any inflation that's happening in your world. Increase your rates to account for the rising cost of living and business expenses that are always going up. It's always going up, just like people's rent. Everything's going up. Food costs at the grocery store, everything's going up. So make sure that you're adjusting as well. And make sure you reassess your value proposition. Regularly update your skills and your services to justify your higher rates. All the things we've covered here, like being the host for somebody else's show, and you host the podcast. You're the one that's speaking, interviewing the person on their own show. That's a way for you to make extra money over top of the ums and ahs. So make sure you're always upgrading your skills and you're always updating your website with what you do now today to help people, because you want to be the one that's the perfect response to a search. So make sure you have your website up to date as you add new skills. And another thing is to garner client feedback. Very important for you to use client surveys to gauge satisfaction and the willingness for someone to pay you to do something for them. It's the internet is full of scams. The internet is full of pay to play. The internet is full of people who pay people to make fake reviews and fake listens in podcasts. There's a lot of shenanigans. There's a word for you. A lot of shenanigans happening in podcasting. You got to cut through all that. And client feedback's a great way to give some validity to what you do. And it also then will help people who are looking at you going, I'm trying to decide if I'm going to go with podcast editor A or podcast editor B. Podcast editor B has got a lot of great reviews and a lot of nice comments. And I got to reach out to the podcaster and talk to them one-on-one about that editor. And they sound like a good choice. Client feedback's great. So use that. Client surveys help you to gauge satisfaction and, again, the willingness for somebody to pay you cash to do what you do. By implementing all these strategies we've talked about in the last few episodes around implementing project-based pricing, it's all designed to help you as a podcast editor to create a pricing structure that really truly reflects the value of the services that you provide. And this approach not only leads to more profitable relationships for you with your clients, but also allows for the delivery of high quality, impactful podcast productions that benefit both the editor as you gain skill, as you gain credibility, as you gain a name in the business, but also helps your client in the long term to have a better podcast. Remember, you're here as a solution. The problem is I need a podcast. I don't have time. I need help. I don't know where to look. I need someone who will organize my passion and dream for a podcast and just make it happen. And you can do that for your clients. And I'm encouraging you to be creative, color outside the lines, come up with something special and unique that you're not seeing someone else do. It could simply be the mix of what you do is different than everyone else, in that everybody cuts out ums and ahs, everybody does show notes. How can you set your business up a little different? How can you stand out? So when people ask the question, where do I go to find a podcast editor? You're one of the first names that are brought up because of what you do and how well you do it. I'm excited for you. I want to hear about your business. I want to hear about your idea. If you started your podcast editing business, I want to hear from you. If this is brand new to you and you're just kicking the tires, let's chat. I'd love to hear your thoughts and what your unique value proposition is for the podcasters in this space and have you on the show. Come on and talk about it. Let's kind of hash it out together, work through our thoughts, our ideas, our plans. I know there's people listening who would love to hear that conversation. So come on the show at podcasteditingandsupport.com. Good luck with everything with your business. I'd love to hear from you and let me know how things are going with you. Really appreciate you being here. Thanks for listening to the Podcast Editing and Support Show. Visit us at podcasteditingandsupport.com, podcasteditingandsupport.com. We would love to help you find a great podcast editor, or if you want to hire us, we would love to work with you. Podcasteditingandsupport.com. Catch you on the next episode. Take care.